The summer heat shimmered like a vengeful mirage over Maple Grove Estates, turning the pristine neighborhood into a pressure cooker of suburban tension. Jake Henderson knew he was different from his neighbors the moment he moved in, and he didn't care one bit. His meticulously maintained backyard, complete with a stunning infinity-edge pool, was his sanctuary, a testament to years of hard work and careful planning. He bought the corner lot deliberately, positioning his home to maximize privacy. The pool wasn't just a luxury, it was a reward for surviving a decade of grueling construction management that had left him with both financial success and a healthy distrust of petty authority. Little did Jake know that his slice of paradise would soon become the epicenter of a neighborhood conflict that would make local gossip look like a children's bedtime story. Martha Pritchard, known to everyone in the Homeowners Association as Karen, had been watching Jake since the day he moved in. Her piercing eyes tracked every detail from behind her perfectly trimmed hedges. The midnight blue pool tiles, the imported landscaping, the conspicuous absence of neighborhood socializing. To her, Jake wasn't just an outsider. He was a direct challenge to everything the HOA represented. The first official encounter came on a scorching Tuesday afternoon. Jake was cleaning his pool, his muscular frame moving with practiced efficiency, when Martha's husband pulled up in his police cruiser. Officer Tom Pritchard was a local cop with a reputation for being more interested in enforcing his wife's personal vendettas than actual law enforcement. "Afternoon, Mr. Henderson," Tom called out, his tone simultaneously official and menacing. "My wife tells me you've been less than neighborly." Jake didn't stop cleaning. He dealt with enough job site confrontations to recognize a power play when he saw one. "If by neighborly you mean letting random people use my private pool, then yeah, I guess I'm not being very neighborly." Tom's jaw clenched. Martha had been relentless about this, convinced that Jake's pool should be a community resource. She'd been circulating whispers through the HOA, suggesting that Jake was antisocial, potentially even hiding something by not participating in neighborhood events. What Martha and Tom didn't know was that Jake had his reasons for valuing his privacy. His past wasn't something he discussed casually, a painful history of betrayal and loss that had taught him to keep people at arm's length. The pool wasn't just a luxury, it was his personal therapy, his place of healing and solitude. "The Homeowners Association has certain expectations," Tom said, his police badge glinting in the sunlight like a barely veiled threat. "We believe in community sharing." Jake finally turned, meeting Tom's gaze with a look that could freeze fire. "Is that an official statement, officer? Because last I checked, my property deed gives me full rights to my backyard." The tension crackled between them, thick as the summer humidity. Neither man was backing down, and both knew this was just the beginning of a battle that would reshape the entire neighborhood's dynamics. Little did they know, the war over the pool was about to escalate in ways none of them could possibly imagine. The next week unfolded like a slow-burning fuse. Jake knew Martha and Tom wouldn't let the pool issue rest. He'd seen their type before, small-minded people who believed power came from controlling others, not from personal achievement. Martha's first move was predictably passive-aggressive. She organized a neighborhood barbecue, strategically positioning the event so that Jake's pristine pool was in full view of every resident. Invitations were accidentally left in everyone's mailbox except his. The message was clear. He was being deliberately isolated. Jake worked from home as a construction project manager, which gave him a unique advantage. Years of dealing with contentious job sites and difficult contractors had honed his skills in strategic patience. He watched from his home office window as neighbors gathered, their laughter and chatter a calculated soundtrack meant to make him feel excluded. What they didn't know was that Jake had his own network of information. His best friend Carlos worked as a local real estate attorney, and his sister Alina was a journalist who had an uncanny ability to dig up background information. A quick phone call to Carlos confirmed what Jake suspected. The Pritchards had a history of similar harassment in previous neighborhoods. "They've been cited multiple times for HOA overreach," Carlos explained during their evening call. "Tom's used his police badge to intimidate residents before. There's a pattern, but most people are too afraid to fight back." Jake's mind was already working. He began collecting evidence. Every interaction, every suspicious communication. His security cameras, initially installed for standard home protection, now serve a more strategic purpose. He documented Tom's threatening visit, Martha's exclusionary tactics, and the subtle ways they were attempting to pressure him. The breaking point came unexpectedly. A Wednesday afternoon maintenance check revealed something alarming. Jake discovered that someone had tampered with his pool equipment. A critical valve had been partially loosened, which could have caused significant damage if not caught early. The timing was too convenient to be a coincidence. He knew he couldn't confront them directly without proof. Jake's construction background had taught him one crucial lesson. Documentation was power. He began meticulously organizing his evidence, knowing that the Pritchards had picked the wrong person to mess with. Alina's investigative skills proved invaluable. Through her contacts, she uncovered that the Pritchards had been involved in similar neighborhood disputes in two previous communities. They had a documented history of using Tom's police position to intimidate residents who didn't conform to Martha's vision of a perfect neighborhood. "They're like neighborhood terrorists," Alina said during a family dinner. "They weaponized Tom's badge and Martha's HOA position to get what they want." Jake's response was calm, almost calculating. "Not this time," he said, a smile playing at the corner of his mouth. "This time, they've made a very big mistake." The pool war was about to enter a new phase, and Jake was more than ready. The Pritchards thought they were dealing with just another resident they could bully. They were wrong. Dead wrong. The HOA meeting was scheduled for the third Thursday of the month, and Jake knew it would be his battleground. He arrived precisely at 7 p.m., a meticulously prepared folder tucked under his arm, his demeanor calm but razor-sharp. The community center's meeting room buzzed with the usual neighborhood gossip when Jake walked in. Martha Pritchard sat at the head of the table, her carefully coiffed hair and pressed blazer projecting an image of suburban authority. Tom stood nearby, his police uniform a not-so-subtle intimidation tactic. Jake's attorney friend Carlos had prepared him well. He knew every bylaw, every regulation, and every legal nuance of the Homeowners Association documents. Martha had always used these meetings as her personal court, where she could manipulate rules and intimidate residents. Tonight would be different. As the meeting progressed, Martha couldn't resist taking her first shot. "We've been discussing the issue of private amenities that could benefit the entire community," she began, her eyes locked directly on Jake. "Specifically, the pool at 1247 Maple Grove Estates." Before she could continue, Jake spoke. "I have some documentation I'd like to present to the board," he interrupted, his voice steady and professional. What followed was a masterclass in strategic exposure. Jake systematically presented evidence of the Pritchards' previous neighborhood disputes. Security camera footage showed Tom's threatening visit to his property. Documented communications revealed Martha's exclusionary tactics. Most damning of all were the records from two previous neighborhoods where they had been formally reprimanded for abuse of power and harassment. The room fell silent. Tom's face turned several shades of red, his police officer's composure cracking. Martha's perfectly maintained facade began to crumble. Whispers erupted around the room as neighbors who had long been intimidated by the couple began to see the truth. "These are serious allegations," Jake continued, "and I'm prepared to file formal complaints with both the police department's internal affairs and the state HOA regulatory board." Carlos had coached him well. Each piece of evidence was meticulously documented, time-stamped, and legally sound. The USB drive Jake presented contained not just accusations, but irrefutable proof. The HOA board members, who had always been more afraid of Martha than committed to fairness, suddenly looked uncomfortable. Years of the Pritchards' bullying had created a culture of fear, and Jake was systematically dismantling it. "I'm not asking for special treatment," Jake concluded. "I'm simply asking for the same respect and privacy that any homeowner deserves." Martha tried to interrupt, but her usual tactics fell flat. The room had shifted. Neighbors who had previously avoided eye contact now looked at her with a mixture of suspicion and growing understanding. Tom remained silent, the weight of potential internal affairs investigation hanging over him like a storm cloud. His badge, usually a symbol of authority, now felt like a burden of potential disgrace. As the meeting concluded, Jake knew this was just the beginning. The Pritchards would not take this lying down. But for the first time, they were the ones on the defensive. The pool war had entered its most critical phase, and Jake was several moves ahead. The aftermath of the HOA meeting was nothing short of a neighborhood earthquake. Within days, whispers turned into full-blown conversations. Neighbors who had previously avoided Jake now sought him out, sharing their own stories of Martha and Tom's long-standing intimidation tactics. Alina's investigative skills went into overdrive. She connected with several families from the Pritchards' previous neighborhoods, uncovering a systematic pattern of harassment that had gone unchecked for years. What Jake had exposed was more than just a local dispute. There was a calculated strategy of bullying that the couple had perfected over decades. But the Pritchards weren't going down without a fight. 2 weeks after the meeting, Jake came home to find an official-looking envelope in his mailbox. It was a citation from the HOA alleging multiple violations of community standards. The charges were laughable, everything from excessive pool lighting to non-regulation landscaping. Each violation came with a hefty fine, a clear attempt to financially pressure him into submission. Carlos reviewed the document and couldn't help but laugh. "This is so poorly constructed it's practically a gift," he told Jake. "They're desperate, and it shows." The real trouble started when Tom began making routine passes by Jake's property. What should have been standard neighborhood policing looked suspiciously like harassment. Jake's security cameras captured everything. Tom's cruiser slowly rolling past, lingering just a few seconds too long, the occasional stop that had no legitimate purpose. But Jake was prepared. He filed a formal complaint with the police department's Internal Affairs Division. The documentation was impeccable: timestamp video, GPS tracking of the patrol car, a detailed log of each suspicious encounter. What the Pritchards didn't know was that Jake had connections. His years in construction management had taught him the value of networks, and he knew exactly who to contact. A journalist friend began asking questions. Local media started sniffing around the story of a police officer potentially abusing his position to harass a local resident. The spotlight was turning, and the Pritchards found themselves under increasing scrutiny. Martha's attempts to rally the HOA fell apart. The carefully cultivated image of community leadership was crumbling. Neighbors who had once feared her now saw her for what she truly was: a bully using bureaucratic power to control others. The breaking point came unexpectedly. An independent investigator hired by the state HOA regulatory board began looking into the multiple complaints filed against the Pritchards. Their history of harassment was about to catch up with them in ways they never anticipated. Jake knew this was more than just a battle over a pool. It was about standing up to years of unchecked intimidation. Every document, every camera footage, every carefully preserved piece of evidence was a step towards exposing the truth. As the pressure mounted, Jake received a late-night call from Carlos. "They're getting desperate," his attorney friend warned. "Be prepared for anything." But Jake was ready. The pool, his sanctuary, his symbol of hard-won peace, would not be sacrificed. The Pritchards had made a fundamental mistake. They picked a fight with someone who knew exactly how to fight back. The final act was about to begin. The final resolution came swiftly and decisively. Within 2 months of Jake's initial confrontation, the dominoes began to fall. Tom Pritchard was suspended from the police force pending the full internal investigation. The evidence Jake had meticulously collected, documented harassment, abuse of police authority, and a pattern of intimidation, proved insurmountable. His badge, once a symbol of power, now hung uselessly as he faced potential criminal charges for misconduct. Martha's reign over the HOA crumbled just as spectacularly. The state regulatory board not only removed her from her leadership position, but also imposed significant fines on the organization for allowing years of systematic harassment. Her carefully constructed persona of community leadership dissolved like tissue paper in rain. The neighborhood had transformed. Residents who had lived in fear began to speak up, sharing stories of past intimidations that had gone unchallenged. Jake became an unexpected hero, not through aggression, but through strategic, documented resistance. During a follow-up meeting with Carlos, Jake reflected on the entire ordeal. "It was never about the pool," he said, watching the sunset from his backyard. "It was about standing up to bullies who think they can use power to control others." Alina's investigative piece ran in the local newspaper, exposing the Pritchards' history of neighborhood harassment. It became a turning point for the community, a wake-up call about the dangers of unchecked authority and personal vendettas. The pool, the original source of conflict, remained Jake's private sanctuary. But now it represented something more. It was a symbol of resistance, of refusing to be intimidated, of protecting personal boundaries. Maple Grove Estates would never be the same. The culture of fear had been replaced by a newfound sense of community respect. Neighbors who had once whispered behind closed doors now spoke openly, supporting one another. As for Jake, he continued his life with the same quiet determination that had seen him through the conflict. The pool remained his personal retreat, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful weapon against bullies is patience, documentation, and an unwavering commitment to personal dignity. The HOA Karen and her cop husband had made a big mistake, and Jake had made sure they would never forget it.